like we're all here.
Hey.
All right. The first topic is the approval of minutes for April 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Minutes are approved. Thank you. Looks like second is the review status of the marina redevelopment, a little update.
Dan, is that you or?
That's you.
That's you.
That's me. Okay, one sentence. I'm going to repeat this to the Economic Development Committee. So where we are with marina redevelopment on the land side is we're just close to completing the RFQ to find a developer for to help us with the steps and to look at putting a building in there to the north of the steps and some other aspects of the redevelopment process. So consultants are working, we've been meeting pretty regularly to put together the RFQ. So we'll keep you informed as we move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Yep.
Now it looks like Marina Master Plan policy question and presentation or discussion.
All right. Well, we just wanted to provide an update to the committee on some of the things we've been working on, and then bring a couple of further policy issues to the table. So, you know, originally, I think we've received about 50 questions or comments on the redevelopment on the water side and the Marina Master Plan. We've responded to all the questions we've received up to this point. All that is on the website. We've tried to categorize that into the 7 categories that I think you're familiar with. Since we last talked to the committee, we've got, I think, 3 additional questions that we've responded to. Most of them are around the dry stack and the adaptive purpose building use. So anyway, we'll continue to update that document on the Marina website and go from there. We did get a letter from the South Shore Condo Association. I think the council was copied on that. We prepared a response to that and have provided that to the council as well. And we did offer to meet with them if they wanted to talk further. We haven't heard back from them on that at this point, but anticipate meeting with them at some point in the future. Something else that we've worked on just as a kind of a glossary or a term sheet. There seemed to be some confusion, or at least questions over terminology that we were using. And so we got some feedback and input that it would be good to kind of make sure that the staff and the council and the boating community and tenants are all kind of using the same terminology as we're talking about. What does a working marina mean, for example, or what is marina redevelopment? What do those things mean? So we've put a draft together of those terms, and that's also on the Marina website. We've reviewed that with some folks, some of the tenants in particular, and gotten some good feedback on that, but anticipate further discussion on that term sheet. A couple of weeks ago, we had a really good meeting with representatives of the yacht club, talking about some of their needs and ways that they could participate and provide input into the redevelopment process on the water side. And so we agreed to meet pretty frequently with them over the next several months. They have an interest, if possible, in actually expanding a presence on the water. They need more dock space to facilitate some of their operations. We talked to them about how we could assist them with some wider fairway or access into the boat ramp where they're having some congestion and things like that. So good discussion with them. I think that there could be some opportunities to partner with them on a number of areas moving forward. Had a good meeting with the DMMA as well at their meeting, kind of brought them up to speed on a few issues as well. A couple other issues that we're working on the marina we haven't really spoken too much about is we have a couple of, I guess I'll call them easements for lack of a better terminology. There's a couple of easements that we have on the marina floor. With one of them is with RCO, that basically they're a recreation office that providing public access to the marina and to the water. They have an easement. It's called the 6F boundary. That's what we refer to it. I'm not really sure why, but it has to do with the easement that they have there. So we're looking to make some adjustments to that easement area that will help facilitate development and better use of the waterfront area by the public, as well as meeting the city's needs a little bit better. So we're working on that. And once we have some more information, detailed information, we can provide that to the committee. But that's something we're working on. And then the DNR has a lease area that we call Lease Area B. And essentially it's the very tip of the North Marina parking lot, right where the fishing pier connects to the parking lot, kind of where the restroom is out there. And so that it's kind of the tip of the north parking lot. And then that Lease Area B also extends out into the water past the entrance to the marina. And so we want to see if we can work a land trade with the DNR for perhaps some other space so that we can actually control all of that land in the north parking lot and the access to our marina without having the DNR being an agency that we would have to permit through. So we may be able to do some land trading or easement trading with them that will make permitting easier for us in the future. So we're working on that. We got 2 statements of qualifications for the dock replacements. We're in the process of reviewing those statement of qualifications. Both teams put together really good proposal, not really a proposal, but good. They're both good companies that we've worked with in the past on the marina. And so we're hoping to make a decision probably by the end of this week on that, which company we would go with, and to begin to negotiate a scope of work with them. Ideally, we'd like to bring that forward to the council for approval June 17th, but I'm not sure if we'll be able to have all the work done by then. If not, it'll be the meeting following that, so that we can get started on the conceptual design for the M&N dock replacements, run that through, get some feedback from the marina tenants, the boaters, the community. And then once we have some of that feedback and selection on the conceptual design of the docks, then we'll almost immediately start the permitting process, so we can get that going while we complete the design effort on that. So that's some good things. And then we did open bids on the North Bulkhead project. And so we'll be bringing that forward to the council for approval June 17th, and looking to get started on that work. So that's kind of an update of what we've been working on in the last month. And, previously we put 4 policy issues on the table with the committee. And I think even with the council, we've talked a little bit about, the issue of covered versus uncovered moorage and slips. We talked about the slip mix, slip sizes, and kind of transitioning from, more smaller boats to more larger boats. And that seems to be the trend in the boating industry. And interestingly enough, we heard the same thing when we met with the yacht club. they're seeing the same trend and needing more space for bigger boats on the docks. So the information that we were getting from Bunzel's was, you know, the same information we heard from the yacht club. So that was encouraging to hear that. We also talked with you previously about dry stack storage options so that we could retain the small boats and that function at the marina just in a different way. And that we would use part of this adaptive purpose building to accommodate the dry stack, the seasonal farmers market, other types of uses on the marina floor. And so those are the 4 questions we've put on the table previously. Tonight, we want to talk with you about 3 other policy issues, and 2 of them are kind of a derivative of the first one. So the main point we want to talk with you about is that we really think that marina rates should be market driven. They need to be set to reflect market conditions. And right now, the way that they're set is essentially by a function of the CPI, Consumer Price Index. The problem with that is that the Consumer Price Index is probably not a direct correlation to what's going on in the boating industry, in the boating community. And so part of the way that we set the rates is through our rate study that is done periodically as part of our master planning work. But in our municipal code, it's hard coded that if the rates change in any, if there's any change in the rate that's different than the CPI, then there's a council approval process in that. And we think that there's a better way to do this to ensure that rates are set to the market and adjusted more nimbly to the market, up or down. And so if you'll recall, when Mark was presenting his report, his phase 2 report, he talked about this thing called occupancy rate. And the idea is that at the marina, we have a certain number of slips based on different sizes of boats, and we can track the occupancy rate of a particular slip. By occupancy, I mean it has a certain revenue potential on an annual basis. So if we lease a slip to somebody for the whole year, and they pay their rent essentially for that slip, then the occupancy rate of that slip is 100%. They've paid, you know, the amount of revenue that we could generate from that slip, we received it. What Mark was saying is that what he sees throughout marinas on the Puget Sound is that, you know, occupancy rates, you know, are typically in the 92 to 94% range. So what we would propose is to do some more research on that and have council set in the code your expectations for the marina as far as occupancy rates. So you're directing the staff to do whatever you need to do to ensure that you're hitting this level of performance at the marina and set the rates accordingly. And that way the law of supply and demand comes into play, as if we set the rates too high, the people will leave the marina because they can find moorage somewhere else on the Puget Sound for less money. So if you're letting us adjust more moorage rates to be more in touch with the market, as long as we hit certain performance targets that you establish that you want to hit for the marina. You know, I was telling some folks here recently, you know, it's conceivable that you could actually have an occupancy rate for the marina that's greater than 100%. And the idea is when we have the slips leased out, to tenants on an annual basis. And let's say, I see Bill Linscott is on the call. Let's say Bill goes for a 2-week vacation and his boat's gone and it's not in that slip. He can work with Scott and Katie to essentially sublease his slip while he's gone. So a guest, somebody who's coming into the marina, could actually use his slip while they're gone on vacation for a couple of weeks, and we would get some added revenue for that. And we actually would, there's a revenue sharing that, Bill would get some benefit of that as well, if he subleased his slip out while he was gone. So just something to keep in mind, that there's a lot that we would look into in setting some of these performance targets as far as occupancy rates, and it would depend on the size of the slip, the size of the boats as well. And so the other piece that comes to play here is that because we're a public marina, we don't make a profit, but we don't want to lose money either. We want to make sure that our revenues and our expenditures are approximately balanced. And so the revenues, we want to be competitive in the market so that the revenue we bring in can fuel and fund other capital reinvestments into the marina. And that's how we would balance that. If we brought in more revenue, we can do more capital investments in the marina. And trust me, there's plenty to do down there. So that would be one main policy issue that we want to bring forward. We want to incorporate that into the code. So let me pause and.
Councilmember Banks.
Thanks, Chair. Dan, so if marina rates are typically market driven, that's my assumption, and ours is driven by the function of the CIP. Who else does that besides Des Moines?
The CPI.
The CPI.
Index, yeah. That's a great question, Scott. I don't know. Do you have any?
Yeah, we've reached out to quite a few, but most marinas out there, and Katie can vouch for me, they do that market study, and they look at that CPI or CPI, yeah, the CPI. But in the the folks in Alaska and Homer and Kodiak and everything else, they do a market study, and if it's way higher than CPI, they do an adjustment there. It might not hit that top level, but somewhere in between. And for us, if we were to do such a thing, the way it's set up now, we'd have to come and ask if we can do some changes. But most people out there have both. They have that market study, and they have, if all else fails, we're going to at least do CPI.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it sounds like a little bit of a guardrail guidelines where you don't have to keep coming back to council to adjust the rates. Can you talk a little bit about, it sounds like you're looking into it, and I heard hints of it, like you're looking at marinas all the way up into Alaska, but can you talk about kind of what you think you're going to look at when you analyze this, down to include our own tenants?
When we look at occupancy rates or?
Well, yeah, and just the rating system. You said you were going to look at several factors when you came to us based on what you got, and I just kind of like the high points of that investigation or knowledge search is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I want to use as local as we can get for the Puget Sound is really key, and ideally South Sound. What are kind of typical occupancy rates that people are experiencing? And right now, occupancy rates are really high. They're I think right now we're completely leased out for the whole year, I think, or at least the summer. Our summer guest mortgages and everything is leased out. So so I would want to use South Sound as best we can, but we'll use other marinas in the Sound to kind of get a sense of here's what all of the marinas in this area are using, and that way the council could pick something that you feel comfortable with. And then at that point, Scott and Katie or Michael and myself would owe you a performance report annually. Here's how we did at hitting those targets. And here's the adjustments that we made to at least hit those performance targets. And so the other thing is that we don't want to always be fluctuating our rates. The voters want predictability. They need that, just like, you know, that's, so we wouldn't be adjusting rates all the time, but, you know, maybe once or twice a year, something like that.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was heading on my next question. And, you know, just on our customers there, the education process, you know, what you saw that being.
Yeah.
They're up to date. You know, we know they get sensitive on this issue. So
Sure.
It's the more we give them information, the better we are, right?
Yeah.
So just kind of what your game plan was there.
It is. And, you know, and we've talked with a few folks about this. And what we talked about with them is that the rates can be adjusted up or down. I mean, we're not talking about just up, you know, as if the voting trends in the area change and now there's more supply than demand, then rates are naturally going to go down. And so it is, you know, we just need to be competitive within the market to hit the target rates that are set by the council. And sometimes that can mean the rates need to go down. So anyway, that was encouraging to the folks that we've talked to on that. So that's something that we're looking into. Want to at least kind of daylight that with you and see if there was any concern or questions that you have with that. The discussion's been helpful in that so far.
Yeah, I think you got the direction you need to go if you were looking for it. So yeah. If you need more.
Yeah. So
I think just from my standpoint, we've typically been the lowest at mortgage in the South Sound anyways. And now I understand why, because it's the consumer price index and we're not doing market rate studies. And I think from my perspective, I think having both of those at hand and those tools in your toolbox to move forward. And it's encouraging that you've talked to the consumer as well, our customers out there, and that they're on board. I mean, nobody likes a hike, but when money's coming back to them, if you lower the rates, then that's a good thing. So I think we just need to figure out what the sweet spot is and go from there. Michael Mathias.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You know, great presentation, you guys, as we kind of work through these. But I think one thing that's really interesting is on the bulkhead, you know, the little outcropping, and you go look on the north side of the marina, and you can see just very visibly, especially low tide, the deterioration in the bulkhead, the wood eroding, the rock kind of slipping out behind it. And the question that needs repair, there's no question. Every time someone sees it, they instantly understand what the challenge is. And I think one of the things for us has been, you know, I think docks are a little less evident as you look at, you know, what needs to happen. And so the rates being relatively stable and low, I don't think they've spoken to the capital needs as clearly as, for example, the bulkhead has. And so now we're in a situation of literally trying to play catch up with the quality of the docks. And so that obviously is going to cost some money. And I think Dan and Scott and Katie are absolutely right that the upward bound barrier is market demand. And then if there's room in there for any reasons to have it be lower, possibly that's something we want to look at, but we got to get the resources to replace the docks. So just thank you.
I think one other aspect to this that I think is important, and we've begun to talk about this a little bit with some of the tenants as well, is that as we replace the docks, a function of the mortgage rate needs to be for the future replacement of that dock again. So if let's just say a dock lasts 30 years, and I'm just throwing out a number, maybe it's probably more than that, but you know, part of the rate should be to set funding aside a little bit at a time, so that when it comes time to replace those docks again in the future, the funding is already in place. So this is not a new concept to the city. It's new to the marina. We haven't really done a very good job at doing that at the marina. But we do this in other departments and other funds. And a good example is our fleet replacement fund. So we do assessments by department for every vehicle, and we have a fund, and within that fund, there's every vehicle that the city owns is listed, and we keep track of the assessments for each of those vehicles over time. So by the time it gets done and that police vehicle needs to be replaced, for example, we already have the money set aside to replace the vehicle. So the idea would be, we want to bring that model into the marina so that each dock, we do it and each slip pays a little bit towards that future replacement. So we're paying ourselves as we go. So that's definitely going to be a function of marina rates and how we begin to protect that asset and that revenue source moving forward. So I see some hands.
Yep, Councilmember Banks, and then Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
So I totally get what you're saying, Dan, and I totally agree. However, earlier in your presentation, you talked about how the marina doesn't, quote unquote, make money or revenues rather. Yep. But yet and still we're talking now about putting money aside from those very rates, yep, to make sure that we have a stable dock system in the future. How does that balance?
So those are real costs. It's not a profit that we're earning. Those are costs that we're trying to capture as part of prudent and responsible, running a prudent and responsible business. I mean, those are things that the private sector does. So why shouldn't we do that in our marina? And so it's not that we're making a profit. It's just we're setting aside a small portion of the monthly revenue that comes in each slip and on each dock for the future capital reinvestment needs of that dock, so that the money is there to do that long-term capital reinvestment. You know,
so then that just sort of leads me to making sure our terms that we talked about earlier, or you talked about earlier, that our terms are exactly that, very clear what it is we're talking about. And then of course, what you just said about putting aside enough to make sure it's a functional marina, functional dock. So I'm just trying to get to that point. It was a little confusing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We can make sure that our term sheets cover that well, you know, and I think that the idea here is that for future councils, you know, 30, 40, 50 years from now, they won't be in the position that we are in now, having to figure out how do we pay for this. By then, the money should be there, and so you're serving them well by doing something like this. So
yeah, thanks, Dan.
So I'm opening up another box here. Have we thought about doing the same thing on the fuel sales?
On fuel, what do you mean?
So can we charge a couple extra cents a gallon or whatever that goes into infrastructure? Maybe I'm off, but just asking because, you know, it's those two revenue sources that are, I know Michael's looking at me, but I'll give you a sec. There's both revenue sources are what supports the enterprise fund primarily. So I was just wondering if that might be able to contribute to it too.
It certainly can. And it's certainly, it's certainly as a function of the fuel sales. We do, even now, in our public works yard, when we sell fuel, we set aside money from our fuel sales for the future replacement of those tanks and the pumps and all of the work that we have to do. So that is an asset that's listed on within that equipment replacement fund on the general fund side. We can do the same thing on the marina side as well.
Go ahead, Michael. You had something.
Thanks. No, I mean, that's Scott and I love talking about this. The idea is that, so Matt, so Deputy Mayor, you're absolutely right, 100%. And the thing is that we have in the past to some degree, which we're slowly improving with, I think, but we've been the loss leader in fuel sales. And so people want to come here. I mean, that's part of the motivation to have moor your boat, because it's so convenient. You can, you know, take advantage of fuel costs. And I remember getting a really hilarious call from the executive director of the Port of Olympia, who is an old friend. And he called up and he said, you know, I was directed to establish fuel sales here, but I can't do it because nobody can compete with Des Moines. And so there's nothing wrong with being a loss leader in fuels, as long as you're not the loss leader in moorage rates, right? I mean, one's got to feed. So now I think what we've done, and it's a great point, and Scott's worked hard, I know, to help the situation, is to rationalize it so that if you have lower fuel sales, it brings you benefit elsewhere, or vice versa. And so that's what we're looking for in this process that Dan's talking about, the allocation of resources. How do we maximize the value that we have and still remain competitive? So at any rate, great. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I do it all the time, man. So that's exactly it. The loss leader. And, you know, even like a few cents up and we're still underneath everybody else, but we're putting a few pennies here and there. Anyway, yeah, but excellent answer. Thank you.
All right, Dan, you got the direction you need, yeah. I think. Let's move the second one.
Yeah, so the second issue here is this would essentially go away if the first policy issue that we talked about was established. But one of the things that we've had for a long time is a seasonal rate option, and so we think that this needs to be eliminated because of the current waiting list for slips. So the idea would be we eliminate this option and in order to respond to the current demand and wait lists. So what a seasonal rate option does is somebody with a boat who just wants to boat from, say, May through September, they come in and they lease a slip space from that for those months or for a certain time of the year. And then in the fall, they pull their boat out and the slip is now empty and we're not collecting any revenue on that. Well, now the demand is so high that there are people willing to pay, we'll just pay the annual rate. And so to us, it seems like, why are we offering a seasonal rate when the demand is there and people will pay us for the year-round cost of that slip? Not just the use of it, but the maintenance staff and everything else that's going on. We think, why are we losing out on revenue that we could gain? So anyway, this would be something we think should be eliminated. And we have people waiting in line that will pay us the full year use of that slip. Can you explain that?
I'm sorry. I'm going to speak to that, and then we'll see if any other council members have anything. Deputy Member Mahoney, I think that's great. It kind of goes hand in hand with the first one. That way, you know, if there was somebody that only wants to have their boat in the water for 3 or 4 months out of the year, they pay the annual rate, and then they're able to tell you that, hey, we're yarding our boat at, and for some savings to us, you could sublet that for a little bit back to me, and then the marina gets the rest of it, kind of thing. So I think it makes sense.
So I get to play devil's advocate a little bit here. So you've got these guys that have come for years. They ran over the summer, late spring, get out early fall. How are you gonna educate them? Because I could see those guys, and I just see it as pushback. I think I agree with you when I say this, but they're going to be saying, you know, I've been here for 30 years, been doing the same thing. How could you cheat me out of my spot? How do we handle that?
Michael, do you want to take that? Because you won't like my answer.
Well, you know, I think one thing, and kind of Louisa was, Councilmember Banks was alluding to this earlier, is that the marina in the end is a business. And, you know, one of the problems, I mean, what Councilmember Banks said is kind of like a national dynamic where many companies that are for-profit take the for-profit in the short term and use that money. And then they get, in the long term, they don't have the resources they need to adapt or innovate or survive. And so we have to make sure we do that. And to whatever degree it fits the needs of people, and I'll you know, then Dan, if Dan's is softer than mine, he can say it. But the idea is that, you know, we if we could, ideally, why not have the marina accommodate everybody for free? But it doesn't work like that. You can't do that. And you've got to make hard decisions, and allowing someone to lease space for 4 months, and then we'll take the loss on the other 8 for that level of participation, when there are people willing to participate all year long and potentially get the utility and functional benefit of it. I think that's where the answer lies.
Yeah, and they'll have the right to do an annual extension first before somebody else gets it.
Sure.
So that's what they have to do. Anyway, I felt we needed to talk about that. So thank you. I thought the answer was good.
You'd been too nice.
All right, the third and final issue here is one of the things that came out in the Bunzell report was that the guest moorage and the dry storage rates, so the storage that we have for the lockers, are grossly under the market. And so we think that we can look to make some adjustments to guest moorage and the use of the lockers almost immediately here. We would want to probably move forward with that. I want to be clear, I'm not talking about long-term tenant moorage. The tenant moorage, we will be doing some rate studies, and we will be in 2021, and the adjustments to rates for permanent moorage would be something that we would do in 2022, probably early 2022. So we think we can make some adjustments to our guest moorage and perhaps capture some revenue this summer that, you know, we may otherwise lose. And so we plan to move forward with that unless I hear otherwise from you.
The only thing I can speak to is I don't remember. It's probably been 6 years since Harbor Master Duesenberry came to us, and we raised rates on the dry storage, and that was, I think, the last time we even heard about it. So I'm glad that you're looking at it and going down that road. That's been contention for me over the last few years, is how under, and I know we're in the position we are because we're trying to help keep rates low and stuff, but we have to compete on a normal level with everybody and not just be the cheapest around, right? And fall into disrepair on everything. Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
Yeah, I'd agree. When I heard that our rates, which are prime real estate for uses, are the same as, you know, stuff up in the middle of the Valley of Kent and so forth like that, that was the eye opener for me. So I think definitely you guys should seriously look at that and get back to us. That's all I got.
Okay. Well, just to kind of wrap up for what we have here, a couple of things we're going to be working on here over the next couple of months. We're going to be, we'll be working on a draft ordinance to the harbor code. We know there's going to be some changes to the harbor code as we bring the master plan forward. So we'll be kind of putting a draft together on that. We are looking to see if there's any way that we can get an economy of scale with our North Bulkhead project, that we could do the tenant restroom at the same time. So we just opened the bids on that. You're going to be seeing some action on that June 17th. We hope to see if there's a way that we can work with that contractor, if we can get a good price from them to do the tenant restroom at the same time that they do the north lot restroom. So we'll be kind of working on that a little bit. We think that'd be a good way to do this project, is to kind of do it all at once. So we're working on that. And then it is our goal to kind of have our first rough draft of the master plan, hopefully by late July, so that we can kind of shop that around to the tenants and boat users and stakeholders to kind of get some feedback on that. So that's kind of where we're headed. And I think that's all we have. Katie, Scott, did I forget anything?
No, I appreciate you taking the lead and everything, Dan, but everything was covered perfectly.
It looks like Deputy Mayor Mahoney has got another question.
Yeah, just real quick. So on the tenant restroom thing, go for it. 2 for 1 or 2 for 1.5 or whatever it might be. The way we can save our residents money is a no-brainer. So I love that. And just, can you give me a couple examples? You talked about the draft ordinance to the harbor code of maybe what you see changing, just so I understand what you're talking about a little bit more there.
Well, one example that we talked about just now would be the way the rates would be set. So we would, we'll have to kind of put some language together and run that by the committee and then the council on those performance targets and what that would be. So that would something that would be a change in the code. And it's just been a while since we've updated the harbor code. Typically, I like to, as we do a master plan update, it's a good time to kind of look at the code and just see what adjustments need to be made. So I don't have anything specific in mind. We just know that there's a few little adjustments here and there that we'll need to make. So.
Thank you.
Great presentation on what's going on. It's good to hear. Are we just really quick, since we got a minute or two, how are we looking with getting permits for the North Bulkhead? Are we anywhere closer, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, the bulkhead work is all permitted, and the mitigation is all addressed at this point. We did have some issues that came up about a month ago, where we had RCO was questioning their involvement in the permitting process. We were able to resolve that. I think that's what you're referring to. And so we did get past that, which was a big relief, because we were already out to bid when that came up. And so anyway.
Very good. Deputy Mayor Mahoney? If
you were to hazard a guess, when do you think we'd start?
We, assuming that the council awards the contract on June 17th, Andrew said that the contractor will be mobilizing mid to late July, with construction starting probably that last week in July. And they really do not want to miss this fish window, and the fish window is August 1st. So they will be driving piles. If they can, they'll be doing it, or doing some of the prep work 1st of August. I doubt they'll be able to get the steel in time to start that work, but they're anxious to get the contract awarded so that they can place orders on that steel for those piles. So
that's exciting. All right, members, is there anything else? Councilmember Bangs, Deputy Mayor Mahoney. All right, guys. I do appreciate it. Well done. Exciting stuff coming up. So thank you, staff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So we'll see most of you in the in about 20 minutes. Thank you.